Step 7, friends, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So, like, when you're 53 and you were the guy who used to, like, mix the show, and that was back when guys were putting picture discs on layaway at Sam the Record Man, and if you didn't get there in time, you kind of snooze, you lose. And then your kids are like in this digital age, and they're the guys making music now. And you're like, whoa, man. So, what's going on with this video? And they say, hey, Dad, put headphones on. It'll help your audio. And you're like, I don't need friggin' headphones. But then you put the headphones on, and it fixes your audio. You learn something, even at 53, from your own kids. For me, humility is teachability. It's that simple. So in the same way, step 1 for me, if you've been paying attention, was a 2-part idea. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. This thing happened in our lives that took complete control over us, and we were powerless to stop it. No matter what we did in human terms, it continually beat us down, and we always ended up in the same place. Insanity, repeating the same thing time and time again, expecting different results. We were absolutely insane. In the same way, this is a 2-part idea. 6 and 7 for me were a 2-part idea and continue to be. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. So I like to read that almost together. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So by now, we recognize there's this list of stuff. Long list, short list, really important list. Parts of it maybe not so important, that got us to this point. Are we teachable enough to recognize that our way got us into trouble? Someone else's way might get us out of trouble, and even more so, bring us into a life that we never imagined possible. That's step 7. For me, that word humility that we go back to time and time and time again in this step translates pretty easily to being teachable, teachability. Can I admit that I'm wrong? Can I recognize, even in real time in the moment, I'm wrong, I screwed up. I need to look at this differently. I need to have somebody else come along and teach me something. Hey, the way I was looking at that was dead wrong. This person's idea is way more brilliant. Hey man, I'm really struggling with this. I need to seek out counsel and maybe consider other ideas and options. Sound like something we're going through in this day and age right now? That's the humility part of it for me. And I'm going to get right into some talking points. One of the talking points I made, and I've made it in previous videos, and I haven't gotten to it, so I put it right at the top of the page here, is read the 12 and 12. I hope you recognize by now, step 7, I'm going through this book with you guys. I'm going through it one day at a time, taking it one day at a time, and it's a grind, man. Like the last few days, I have wanted to tap out, but I'm down here, I'm working at it because I made this commitment. So one day at a time, I'm going through this 12 and 12. And I hope if you get anything from any of these videos, you're getting into the literature, because we're going to look at some literature today. Read this book. If you're tuning into this because you're trying to learn about sobriety, learn about Alcoholics Anonymous, learn about getting sober, learn about getting over your addictions, whatever it is, you're tuning into this because you want to learn something from this 50-year-old bald guy with far too many tattoos. It's in these books. That's where I'm getting it from. So read the 12 and 12. There's so much more, and Bill expands so brilliantly, as do his editors and whoever it was helping him along. They expand so much more on these ideas in these books. and it's brilliant writing. It's certainly dated. It's from 1953, so a lot of the language is challenging for sure, but the ideas are there and they're brilliant. Step 7, humility, teachability, if you will, and this is borrowed from the 12 and 12. It's the bedrock for all of AA's 12 steps. Teachability is the key. And one of the ideas that I think needs to be pointed out here is the idea that when we walk into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, be it one of those dusty church basements that smell like mildew and mold, some public community center, some utility room in the back of a library somewhere, whatever it is, wherever it is, if we're picking up the AA hotline and we're making a call and we're sitting in a coffee shop with somebody we've never met before, and between the shakes and the nerves we're sweating like, we're answering questions in a police station somewhere. Whatever the situation is that got us to this point, we've recognized that something's wrong in our lives and we need help. And we've heard a lot about this program of Alcoholics Anonymous, this program of rehabilitation that might be able to help us. So whatever that situation is, we find ourselves right here, right now, in this moment going, hey man, something's wrong, I gotta fix it, and I need help doing it. That's humility. That's the beginning of teachability. We've spoken a lot in these last few videos about willingness. If you can at least get yourself to that place to say, hey man, I'm willing in this moment to openly admit something's wrong and I need help with it. That willingness is the beginning of teachability and humility. So, let's move forward. Before I get to this one, guys, yeah, I'm glad I made a little bit of a notebook here. Alcoholics Anonymous, big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you're paying attention, you know that I love the 3rd edition. So for me, the 3rd edition is right here, and I want to touch on this guy right here. Page 62, how it works. Selfishness, self-centeredness. That, we think, is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Lots of self there, eh? We step on the toes of our fellows, and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Man, I love that. I love that language. I love those words. They just so beautifully depict everything for me. Self-will run riot. That was me. I was so full of shit. Oh my goodness gracious, convinced of my own bullshit story. If you paid attention in any of these videos in the last few days, I even spoke about, and this one is just horrific for me to think about. I was that guy. I lied to anybody who would listen about a grade 12 diploma. Something so stupid and insignificant and petty, but I told a lie. I did. And I pushed it and pitched it to anybody whose ears would open up to it. Only so I could try to then convince these people that Chrysler Canada was the frickin' monster, not me. If they would just give me a job, my life would be so much better. I saw brother-in-laws and uncles and other people with these wonderful jobs, making big money and pensions and having guaranteed income. And I thought 100%, if I could just have that thing, I would be great. So why wouldn't Chrysler Canada give me a job? Because I didn't meet their basic requirement, grade 12 diploma. I didn't have it, and I wouldn't go get it. And here's the kick. Once I got it, boom, the phone started ringing and people wanted to hire me. Self-will run riot. Zero humility. Zero ability to listen to those people who wanted to teach me. And they were there. As much as I want to think they weren't, they were there. Those people tried to reach out to me. It was quite simply that they had gotten to a point where they couldn't. They couldn't give me any more of their time. Take my brother-in-laws and my sisters, for example. They were raising children. And I'm going to drop a photo here that's going to give you an idea of exactly what I'm talking about. These people that had children to raise, families to raise, these things demanded their time and their effort and their energy. These things demanded that they give them attention. My nieces and nephews certainly deserved my brother-in-law and sister's attention far more than I did. Some 20-year-old who wouldn't listen to what he was being told anyways. So why wouldn't they give them their attention? This picture is an incredible example of what I'm talking about. So take a minute, read it, enjoy it, and away you go. There you go. So anyways, what we're talking about here is a perfect example of a person who knows the problem is afoot. They know that it's right there. They know that something's going wrong, but they want help on their terms. Self-will run riot. Zero teachability, zero humility. If that's where we're stuck, we can't get on with the rest of the steps. We can't get into that place where people who have something to share, people who have something to teach, people who are literally in these rooms living it and doing it every day of their lives. Myself, 25 years deep, when I was in those rooms, the men had 10, 15, 25, 35, 40 years. And these guys had been going to these meetings for as long as I can remember. Some of these guys were the OGs, and I say originals, that were going with my dad. So of course they had something to teach me. And by the time I hit these doors, I certainly had the experience and the knowledge of them that allowed me to at the very least be receptive. A lot of newcomers aren't. And I recognize that benefit that I had. So when I write down here that without question, humility is the bedrock for all of A.A.'s 12 steps, what I'm talking about is that teachability. If you don't have the ability, or you're lacking the ability, or you're struggling with the ability to just understand that these people might have something to teach you, maybe it's time to head back to step one. Beyond that, this is what we're trying to grasp in step 7, is the idea that teachability is everything. So I'm going to head back to the book, and if you're willing, you'll come along with me. Page 72, step 7, toward the bottom. For us, the process of gaining a new perspective was unbelievably painful. It was only by repeated humiliations that we were forced to learn something about humility. It was only at the end of a long road, marked by successive defeats and humiliations, and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency, that we begin to feel humility as something more than a condition of groveling despair. Every newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous is told, and soon realizes for himself, that his humble admission of powerlessness over alcohol is the first step toward liberation from its paralyzing grip. And in this is kind of what I was hinting at earlier when I was trying to point out that this is the beginning of humility. This is the beginning of teachability. This is the moment that we recognize there's certainly something out there, and there's a group of people out there that are realizing success that we, in that moment of despair, haven't realized ourselves. And that longing to gain some sense of release, control, humanity, to gain that back, we bring ourselves to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And hopefully by the time we've arrived at step 7, we've recognized that certainly there's a power greater than ourselves, and this power is releasing us from some of those crippling behaviors and self-loathing that has reduced us to nothing, and we're starting to come alive again. Step 7 is the moment that we understand that teachability gives us the opportunity to look to God, to look to our higher power, and rely on Him to continue to do that work in us. I got another talking point here I want to hit on, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up today. This one's a little bit longer, so bear with me. It's on page 74, about the middle of the page. When we have taken a square look at some of these defects, have discussed them with another, and have become willing to have them removed, our thinking about humility commences to have a wider meaning. By this time, in all probability, we have gained some measure of release from our more devastating handicaps. We enjoy moments in which there is something like real peace of mind. To those of us who have hitherto known only excitement, depression, or anxiety, in other words, to all of us, this newfound peace is a priceless gift. Something new indeed has been added. Where humility had formerly stood for a forced feeding of humble pie, it now begins to mean the nourishing ingredient which can give us serenity. In AA, back to the top of page 75, we looked and listened. Everywhere we saw failure and misery transformed by humility into priceless assets. And I'm going to leave it at that one. I feel like there's not a whole lot more I can add. I'm 17 minutes in, so this one's definitely running long already. But I want to impress upon anybody that might be listening to this one that this has been kind of the echoed refrain of the 25 years that I've been clean and sober. It's what I continually megaphone into my children's ears and to my wife and to anybody around me. What I found in Alcoholics Anonymous was humility. I use the word teachability because I think it's an easier way to express the idea. But that in a nutshell is it. And that for me, coupled with the faith I found that works, has changed everything. I wake up every day ready, willing, and able, and prepared to learn whatever I can from whomever and whatever situation I find myself in. I firmly believe that from a 2-year-old to an 80-year-old, I have something to learn from everybody. And I pray that for you. If you are considering a life in recovery, that's the key. I am convinced that's the key. Becoming teachable. Humility is certainly the foundation bedrock principle of every one of these steps. So it works if we work it, friends, one day at a time. And I am cheering you on, man. I love you guys. And man, it's Monday tomorrow. Something brand new. Take care. Bye. Stop button. Have a good one, guys. Bye.